Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining me in today's webinar. I am Abdel Jabbar from GrandStream Support, and I will be presenting today's session about Captive Portal on the GWN 7600 series. Before we get started, I would like to mention that this session will be recorded and later posted on the GrandStream YouTube channel. And during the presentation, if you guys have any questions, feel free to submit them in the Q&A section in the bottom right corner of your IP Video Talk screen. And we will have some time towards the end to go over these questions. So this is the agenda for today. First, I will briefly go through the GWN access points manufactured and supported by GrandStream Networks. Then we will talk about Captive Portal and describe the different methods supported for Captive Portal authentication. And during the live demo, I will describe how to implement Facebook login API with Captive Portal and how to generate unique voucher codes for wireless clients who only need to connect to the wireless network for a limited time. And we will wrap up this session with question and answer. So GrandStream has a wide offering of indoor and outdoor access points that are designed to serve small to medium-sized businesses, such as offices, enterprise facilities, and even residential. They offer high performance networking, great Wi-Fi coverage range, fast and easy provisioning and management thanks to the built-in controller, and also support for management through GWN Cloud, which is the free service of GrandStream that is based in the cloud that allows you to manage all the access points from one centralized management. So the first model in the list is the GWN 7615. This model supports up to 200 clients, and it has a coverage range of 175 meters, and it provides you with a throughput of 1.75 gigabits per second. And this model has a built-in controller. You can use like one access point to manage up to 50 other access points. This model is built with 3x3 antennas, single user MIMO. The second model, which is the GWN 7602, this one is a small model and it supports only 80 clients. It has a coverage range of 100 meters and a gigabit speed of 1.17 gigabits throughput. And one thing about this model, it comes with 3 fast Ethernet ports with the PoE support. This solution is usually implemented in hotel rooms, and it's an ideal solution for that scenario because it allows you to use both wireless and wired connection. This model is built with 2x2 single user MIMO technology. The third model is the GWN 7630. This one supports up to 200 clients and has a coverage range of 175 meters. And you can use the built-in controller to manage up to 50 access points. Another thing about the GWN 7602, which I did not mention, is that this model 7602 does not have a built-in controller. In other words, you can't use GWN 7602 to manage the other access points. But you can use, for example, GWN 7630 to manage the GWN 7602. So the GWN 7630, this one has 4 antennas with multi-user MIMO technology. And one thing that you're going to notice here is that the more antennas the access point has, the higher the throughput, because the more antennas allows the access point to actually talk to many different different devices at the same time, especially when using the multi-user MIMO technology. And the fourth model in the indoor access points is the GWN 7605. This model supports up to 100 clients, and it has a coverage range of 165 meters, and it gives you a throughput of 1.27 gigabits per second. This one also has a built-in controller that you can use to manage up to 50 access points, and it comes with 2x2 antennas, multi-user MIMO technology. For the outdoor access points, we have the GWN 7505 LR and GWN 7630 LR, which are powerful long-range Wi-Fi access points with weatherproof casing and heat-resistant technology. They have extended Wi-Fi coverage of up to 250 meters and 300 meters. They both have built-in controller to manage up to 50 access points. So the GWN 7605 LR comes with dual band 2x2 multi-user MIMO and can support up to 100 simultaneous wireless clients. It offers a throughput of 1.27 gigabits per second. For the GWN 7630 LR, this one is designed for medium to large enterprises and businesses that need to provide long-range coverage in both indoor and outdoor spaces. So even if these access points are designed to work for outdoors, you can still use them for indoor, especially in cases where you need to have a long coverage range from the access points. And this model offers dual band 4x4 multi-user MIMO technology and an antenna design for maximum network throughput of 2.33 gigabits per second. And it supports up to 200 clients and an expanded range of 300 meter. One thing about the Grandstream access points is that all of them are supported by GWN Cloud, which is the Grandstream free cloud Wi-Fi management platform. They also offer QoS, advanced QoS actually. You can use them for mesh network. You can use them to build a wireless bridge. They come with captive portals, which is the topic of today. And you can do that with social media authentication or with voucher, something that we're going to explain with more details in the next slides. So the captive portal basically means the web portal page that will be displayed on Wi-Fi clients' browsers when they attempt to access the internet. The Grandstream GWN access points, they come with the default ones, but if you have some familiarity with the HTML, you can build your own files and folders and you can upload them to GWN so you can customize the look of your captive portal web page. There's also the option where you can specify or enter landing page so that when the users, they authenticate to your access point or they have access to your wireless network, you can redirect them, for example, to your social media profile, or you can redirect them to your website, or when you have like a product they would like to promote, you can use any kind of website that, so you can redirect all the clients to that website. The captive portal on the GWN also has the option where you can specify the type of traffic that is allowed. For example, if you have captive portal deployed in a public place, let's say cafe or restaurant, and you don't want people to have access to certain services like SSH or Telnet or FTP, there is the option of the post authentication under the captive portal where you can go and add the type of traffic that users cannot be allowed to use or to have access to. And the captive portal, by the way, is assigned to an SSID. In other words, if you have a wireless network for your office and then a wireless network for guests, you will have to create two SSIDs so that the office workers won't have to do the authentication every day. Instead, the guests who try to join your Wi-Fi network will have to go through the process of authenticating using one of those methods that we're going to see next. So when it comes to the authentication methods, the captive portal supports 4 methods. There is a social media login. You can use the Facebook API or you can use the Twitter API, and you get the ID and the secret key from the social media development platform, and then you implement it on the GWN. This is something that we're going to see during the live demo. There's also the vouchers. This option allows clients to have internet access for a limited period of time using a code that is randomly generated from GWN controller, and the code is made of 10 digits. The third option is Radius Server, and this one provides a centralized authentication and accounting management for users who try to connect to the wireless network. This is usually implemented in corporate and enterprise environments. And then the fourth method, which is the one that we usually use, which is you find the SSID and then you enter the password, the authentication password associated with that SSID. So to configure Facebook authentication on the access point using the captive portal, you will need to have a Facebook account, and then you go to the Facebook development so you can create a new app on the Facebook development. And when you create that app, it's going to give you an ID and the password associated with that ID, and that's something that you have to configure on the GWN. We're going to see anyway how you can make that configuration on the GWN during the live demo. Facebook Login also provides a nice option, which is analytics. If you go to Facebook Analytics, you can have access to all the devices that try to access your Wi-Fi network through Facebook authentication. You can also use the combination of both Facebook authentication and Twitter authentication so that the users can choose which platform to use to connect to your Wi-Fi network. So there are 3 main or 4 main steps involved to configure the Facebook authentication login on the GWN. So as I mentioned earlier, you need to, or you must have a Facebook account, and then you go to the Facebook for development or for developers, and then you create an app. It's an easy process. You do that just to get the app ID and the password. Then you go to the access point and you go to the captive portal policy, and you create a captive portal and you choose the social login authentication. Then you use the Facebook app ID and also the secret or the app secret that you get from your Facebook account. So once you create the captive portal policy, then you assign that captive portal policy to the SSID, and then under the SSID you choose the captive portal that has the name or that is associated with the captive portal policy that you just created. And then you can always go back to your Facebook for developers, and if you go to analytics, there you will have access to all the activities and the events that took place on your Wi-Fi network through the Facebook authentication login. The second option for the captive portal authentication is the voucher feature, which allows clients to have access to Wi-Fi for limited duration using a code that is randomly generated from a GWN controller. For instance, a coffee shop or restaurant could offer Wi-Fi access using voucher codes that can be delivered for each transaction. And the voucher codes are set up with a predefined duration. So once the voucher expires, the client can no longer have access to Wi-Fi. And when creating vouchers, you can specify how many devices can connect to Wi-Fi using the same voucher code. You can allow up to 5 devices to connect to your Wi-Fi using a single voucher code. And the expiration of the duration of the voucher will start counting after the first successful connection. The voucher feature also allows you to create up to 1,000 codes at a time, and you can print them directly from the GWN web interface. And another interesting feature is that the admin can set data bandwidth limitation on each created voucher. For example, you can create vouchers for VIPs where you can assign them, for example, high bandwidth, and then you can create another bulk of vouchers with the lower bandwidth data. So you have a lot of options how you can do that. This is something that we're going to see when we go through the live demo. Radius is a centralized authentication management, and is usually used in different environments. They use it also for the 802.1x. You can also use it for either Ethernet or wireless. So when you use it with wireless, you need to have or set up fully working Radius server for authentication. In other words, you go to the server and then you create the credentials for the users, and you give those credentials to each user, and that's something that they should keep and that they should use all the time to connect to the wireless network. And as I mentioned earlier, the Radius authentication is usually used in more corporate enterprise environments to add an extra layer of security, because just by going to the Radius server, you can have metadata about the users, when they authenticated, when they failed to authenticate, when their authentication was successful. So you have access to a lot of information. And when you create the credentials, as I mentioned, each user will be assigned unique Wi-Fi access login credentials. You can also, there are many things that you can specify when you do the Radius on the access points. When you do the authentication on the Radius server, you can still specify the time of connection that is allowed for these users. And you can also specify how many times they can log in to the access points. We're going to go through those settings when we go through the live demo. All right, so I'm just going to stop this presentation and go to my browsers. Let me bring this one here. All right, so first of all, we're going to start with the Facebook login credential or authentication. The first thing you need to do is you go to Facebook for developers. As I mentioned, you must have a Facebook account. If you use it for the first time and when you click on My App, it's going to give you a prompt that's going to ask you to enter your phone number. Then you enter the phone number, then it's going to send you a code. And that's the code that you're going to enter to authenticate to make sure you are that person. And once you go over that authentication process, then you will have your apps here. So as you can see, I already have two here, two apps created. If you want to add another one, just click on Add New App. And for the Facebook authentication for the access points, we're going to use the Manage Business Integration. Then we're going to give it a name. Let's say this is for, you can put any name. You can put the name of your company, Wi-Fi connection, and then we're going to choose Other Business. We're going to leave these the way they are, then create App ID. So we're going to confirm this one here, submit. All right, then the next step, we're going to go to Facebook login to set up one. Then we're going to go to settings. Then when we go here, one thing that's important is the valid OAuth redirect URI. This, the link that you need to put in here, you can get it from the user manual, or you can get it from, let me go back here to policy list. I'm still gonna go back here later, but I just wanna show you we can get that URL. So if you hover over this tool, it's gonna show you the URL at the bottom, a redirect URL. So you're gonna copy and paste that link, and then you go back to your Facebook for developer, then we're gonna paste that one here. Okay, and then login for devices, because we're gonna use it for authentication login, so we have to set that one to yes. And for the rest of the other settings, we're just gonna leave them as the default, then save the changes. So now that I saved the changes, you can see that this application now, or this app now has an ID. So we're gonna go to under settings, then basic settings. And this is the app ID that we need to copy from here. So I'm just gonna copy it in my notebook. And then we're gonna need to copy the secret. It's gonna ask you to enter the password for your Facebook account. So I'm just gonna do that. Submit. Then we will copy this code, because we're gonna need the ID and the secret to configure Facebook authentication on GWN. For the namespace, I can just give it the same name, Wi-Fi connection. For here, I'm just gonna enter the GrandStream link. It's actually HTTP. Then I'm gonna put W. The category, I'm just gonna choose business and pages. This is not important, but I'm just gonna choose this category. Then save and apply those changes. So now the application is, the app is ready. So we saved all the changes. We have the app ID, and we have the secret. The next thing you need to do is you have to turn this one live. You must provide a valid privacy URL. Okay, let's go back here. So this is GrandStream. Oh, okay, so this is the one that we missed. So I'm just gonna enter the same information again. Save and apply. I forgot to add the name, so we're just gonna call it GS. Okay. So again, we're going to choose business and pages. Then we're going to switch mode. Once you click on switch mode, this app will go live. So we're going to go back to GWN. And when you go to captive portal, if you want to create the Facebook authentication, you go in the policy list. So we're going to add one here. Then we're going to give it a name, Facebook authentication. The splash, we're just going to use the internal stuff that is built in the GWN. If you have something else, like if you're familiar with HTML and you have your own files and folders, you can upload them to GDML. You can upload them to GWN, I'm sorry. Then we go to social authentication to use Facebook. So we're just going to click on Facebook. The client expiration, we're going to choose, for example, days. We can call it 1 day. And the app, so I'm going to copy the app that I just created, copy. And the secret key, copy and paste. If you want to use both of them, Facebook and Twitter, you're going to go through the same process with Twitter. You're going to go to Twitter for developers and then create the same thing, like create an app. They will assign you an app ID and the secret, and you just copy that information here. So we're going to use the default portal page. And then we're going to choose the landing page. We're going to redirect users. Let's say we're going to use the GrandStream website here. So every time users connect to the Wi-Fi network, the access point will redirect them to this page. If you choose enable daily limits, that means each device will be able to connect only one time for per day. So this is here we have 1 day. If you enable HTTPS, this is for other websites. You can just check that one in case you have an HTTPS website. And then if you go under authentication rule, you have the pre-authentication and then you have the post-authentication. The post-authentication are the ones that you ban after they connect to your access, to your Wi-Fi. And the pre-authentication are the websites that are actually that you allow the users to access. For example, we need to use Facebook, so we're going to have to add Facebook to the list of allowed traffic. So let's say you have this GWN deployed in a restaurant, and you don't want people to start sending SSH commands to the router or any device in your network. So I can just include my subnet, for example. And then the service, I can choose, let's say TCP ports, and then I can enter 22. If you want to add Telnet as well, you can choose Telnet, and you can add port 23, and you choose the subnet. So this is where you specify all the traffic that you would like the people who access your Wi-Fi through this SSID. You will ban them from using any type of SSH or Telnet to access any devices in your network. So we're going to save and apply those changes. So it's going to take a few seconds to apply them. I'm not sure if I assigned it a name. Let me go back here. Okay, so this is all set. So after we create the captive portal, we go to the SSID. So I'm going to create an SSID here, enable, then I can give it, for example, local or guest network or guest Wi-Fi. Here you have some options. Of course, you always want to use dual band because there are some users still using devices that only support specific band, like either 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. If you want to make the SSID hidden, you just check this box. If you have this SSID deployed on a separate VLANs, you just specify the VLAN. So I'm not using any VLANs here. Then there is the wireless client limit. So if I want to limit the number of clients that can connect to this access point to 50, I just enter 50. So I'm using here 76, 15, so that one can go up to 100, I believe. So I'm just gonna enter 50. Then client inactivity, by default, it's set to, I believe it's 5 minutes. In other words, if a user connects to your network and there is no activity for 5 minutes, they will get disconnected from the Wi-Fi. If you want to increase it, you can add, for example, 600 for 10 minutes. Then here we're going to enable the captive portal, and then we're going to choose the one that we just created, which is GWN Wi-Fi. If you want to make it open, like in cafes and restaurants where people can just join your network just by doing the Facebook authentication without the need to know the password associated with the SSID, you can choose open. In case you want to use WPA2, they will need the password for this SSID, and once the authentication is successful, then they will be redirected to the Facebook authentication login. So I'm just going to make this one open. So I only require users to use their Facebook authentication. You can also use the, we don't want to use this one, by the way. This is a client bridge support. This is in case you want to create a wireless bridge. So there's no, I'm not going to use any time policy or MAC filtering. I can choose, for example, this option, client isolation. And I'm going to use radio. In other words, users will only have access to the internet. I can choose internet. So they're not going to be able to talk to each other. For example, you have printers in your network. Users that connect to your Wi-Fi through this SSID will not be able to talk to any other device in your network. So I'm going to choose internet. You can enable these options like here, like 802.11k, 802.11v. These are useful, especially when you have roaming devices. In other words, when you have more than one access point deployed in your environment. But in case you only have one access point, you don't need to have these options enabled because these are for roaming. Then the device membership, since I have 2 access points, I can choose which one I would like to assign this SSID to. I can assign to both of them, or I can choose only one of them. So save and apply the changes. So now that I created the SSID, so when the users, they try to log into that SSID, they will basically be presented with a page like this. So they're going to choose the SSID, then it's going to take them here, and then from here you click on connect with Facebook, and once you connect with Facebook, it's going to ask you for your Facebook username and password to authenticate. I can't use that one because I'm on live session. If I switch the access points, I might get disconnected. But this is an example of the page that you're going to get using the Facebook authentication. So the next thing, we're going to go to vouchers and how you can create vouchers on the access points. So to create vouchers, again, you go to vouchers and the captive portal. As you can see, I have some vouchers already created. If you want to add more, you can come here, create number 1 time. So I'm going to create only 10. As I mentioned earlier, you can go up to 1,000. If you try to go over 1,000, it's going to tell you the number exceeds. If I put 1,001, that exceeds the limit. So I'm just going to use 10. The maximum devices, you specify how many devices can connect to Wi-Fi using one single code. So I'm going to put 2 devices. So every time I give this code to a user, they're allowed to use it on 2 devices. The byte limit, this is where you specify how much data they can get. For example, if I put 100, that tells the user, like, once they go over 100 megabytes of data, they're not going to have access to Wi-Fi. Or we can just leave that one blank, and then we can specify the download limits so that they don't exceed 5 megabits per second. And they upload 5 megabits. The duration, this one is valid. Let's say we're gonna make it valid for 2 days. this is like an example. If someone is staying in a hotel for 2 days, you can specify the duration for 2 days, and the validity time also we can specify it for 2 days. I don't know how many hours is that. Oh yeah, that's by day, so we're going to put 2 days as well. Save and apply the changes. So we have 10 created earlier, now we added another 10. You can print the code, so when you click on print, this is what you're going to get as a code. So it gives you the code that you're going to use to connect to Wi-Fi, when it's going to expire, and the duration is 2 days. I have not specified any data, so it's unlimited, and the maximum devices are 2. So I'm going to close this one here. And then you can delete a voucher code. You have this option here, it says reset. So if someone uses a code and the code get expired after 2 days, you can actually reset it from here so they can use it for another 2 days. Let's say you have a guest at a hotel who wants to extend his stay for another 2 days, you can just come here and reset it so that it can he or she can use it for another 2 days. So now that we created the vouchers, the next thing we need to do is create an SSID. We need to do the captive portal, sorry. So we created the vouchers. The next thing we need to do the captive portal. And here, instead of using social login, I'm going to use vouchers. Here you see other options like login for free, Radius server, login with a password. Login the password is like the normal one that you know, which is you find the SSID and then you enter the password, or you can do login for free. Login for free, if you set up that one, users, when they connect to your access point, you only have the option to use the landing page. Once they connect to your access to your Wi-Fi, you can redirect them to a website or social media profile. So I'm going to use vouchers. I can call it vouchers. And then the redirection, I want to send them to GrandStream page. Enable daily limit. Again, if you enable this one, they will only be able to connect once a day. But in our case, we're using vouchers, so this one doesn't add any other options. So we're going to save and apply. Again, if you want to add any rules, you can add them here the same way we did earlier with Facebook. Save and all right, so I'm not going to apply anything. I go to SSID, create SSID, enable. So this is for, we can call it, for example, vouchers codes, no VLAN. So we're going to leave everything the way it is. Then we're going to choose the captive portal that we just set up for vouchers. And I make sure I choose the access points. You can make that one open again. So the users can only authenticate with their vouchers. No need to use the Wi-Fi password. Save and apply, then apply the changes. So this is it for the live demo. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to submit them in the Q&A section or the chat section. I still have a few more minutes to go over your questions. So I have a question here from Keith. He's asking, how does previous 7610 fit between these models mentioned? Let me just mark this one as answered. The 7610 is still valid. The same options that you have here. Let me show you something. If we go to firmware, if you look at the firmware versions here, all of them, they have the same version number. In other words, they all have the same features. In this presentation, I only focus on the new models that we just released. And whatever I showed you today is going to apply to 7610 as well. David is asking, is the byte limit download, upload, or total? I believe that's a total of both, David. That's going to be a total of both. Jalal has a question. Is it possible to link the Radius authentication to Active Directory? It has to be, I mean, if you have, this is something that you have to do between Radius and Active Directory, so you can grab the users and their passwords from Active Directory and import them to your Radius server. This again, this is something they have to do between the Radius authentication and the Active Directory, and I believe this is possible. You can do that. There is an option on Active Directory how to set that up, but the access point itself is only going to be able to talk to the Radius server, the one that you configure under the SSID or the captive portal configuration page. So I don't see any more questions. Again, thanks everyone for joining me today in this webinar. And I hope to see you next time in one of the next webinars. And have a great day. Thank you.